Alright everybody, welcome to the matched pair T interval video you've all been waiting for. The goal of this video is to help you identify a matched pair design, help you use your calculator, and write a confidence interval. So let's get started. So in this problem, we said in a study of memory recall, 8 people were given 10 minutes to memorize a list of 20 nonsense words. Each was asked to list as many words as he or she could remember, both 1 hour and 24 hours later. Construct a 90% interval to estimate the true mean difference in words you can remember 1 hour minus 24 hours. Okay, so let's look at why this would be a matched pair. We definitely have two samples here. The sample from 1 hour, we collected data an hour later and asked them how many words could you remember out of 20. And then we asked them again, those same people, 24 hours later. So this represents person 1. This represents person 2. And so on. So here are your 8 individuals. This number and this number represent the 2 scores that person 1 earned on this little nonsense quiz. And we can see that 24 hours later, most of the people, actually all of the people, forgot a few words. So each person was asked to perform this nonsense quiz recall word thing twice. So we have one subject getting 2 treatments. And that's what a matched pair design is. So the 2 treatments were to be quizzed 1 hour later and 24 hours later. So when we have, if this is one individual, we're really interested in how many words did they forget in general. So what we're going to do is we're going to subtract this person's 1 hour score and their 24 hour score, and so on. So we're going to do 14 minus 10 is 4. And you're going to do that for all of them. You can also do it in your calculator. So in my calculator, I have the 1 hour list in list 1, the 24 hour list in list 2, and then I'm going to go to list 3, and according to the problem, they wanted us to do 1 hour minus 24 hours. So I'm going to do list 1 minus list 2. And that's the difference list. So in a matched pair T interval, and we know that this is an interval because they asked us to estimate. In a matched pair T interval, our goal here is to look at how did they change from the one treatment to the other. So what I did here is I just wrote down the list that we just created, and it's almost like I don't really care what's happening here anymore. I'm really interested in this data. So I'm going to perform a T interval on the difference list. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with the state, plan, do, and conclude. And keep in mind, we're only going to use this. We're not going to use this data anymore. So when we want to state the problem, we want to define the parameter and what level you want to estimate. And I'm going back to the prompt, it said it wanted a 90% confidence level. Therefore, to define the parameter, we're trying to figure out the true mean difference in recall words. And you want to say how you're going to subtract. So we want to say 1 hour minus 24 hours. And then you also want to say the level. So we want to estimate the true mean difference in recall words at the 90% confidence level. So in the beginning, you want to define what are you talking about, and we're talking about the true mean difference in recall words, and at what level you want to estimate at, and we want to do it at the 90%. Okay, so we got to make sure that this problem works, so we're going to check out the plan section. It involves the SRS, the independent, and is the distribution approximately normal. So going back to the prompt, I'm looking back at it right now, and I don't know that the people were chosen at random, so we're going to go ahead and just assume. Also, there were 8 people in the study, and I don't know how many or where they got this population, so I'm going to assume that, I'm not going to say assume, but I think there's about 80 people that could have probably done this task, so I'm going to say that the population is at least 10 times the sample. And in this problem, we have data. And whenever we have data, I know we're tempted to use the central limit theorem, but whenever we have data, we must graph the data. So I think the best option here, because the numbers are pretty small, is to go with a dot plot. So a dot plot, so your options really quick before we do the dot plot are a histogram, a stem plot, and a dot plot. And if you need any help with those, I know there's some old videos that explain all those different kinds of graphs. So a dot plot is just literally just a number line with dots on top of it. You don't have to do dots. You can do X's or, I don't know, a letter. It doesn't really matter. So this represents the difference in recall words. And we had a 4, an 8, a 4, a 1, a 2. I'm being kind of sloppy here, but notice I'm still trying to keep these the same height so that way I can see the shape. I also had a 3, a 4, and another 3. Okay, so definitely this 8 was an outlier, but I'm thinking that the shape is generally skewed. So I'm going to say the distribution, or the dot plot appears skewed. Assume distribution is approximately normal. And we made an assumption here. We made an assumption here. So we definitely should proceed with caution. Be careful. All right. So let's do the problem. A t-interval is when you don't know the population standard deviation, so it's x bar plus or minus t times the sample standard deviation over root n with degrees of freedom n minus 1. So in this scenario, it's going to be 7 degrees of freedom. So unfortunately, I don't have a table of values with me, so I'm going to use my calculator to solve this problem. If you wanted to look up this value, along the bottom you would look up 90%, and then along the left you would look up 7, and where your fingers connect at 90 and 7 is what would be the t value. If you want to use the calculator, you're going to go to stat, test, and we are working on a t-interval. And you have your choices of data or stats, and in this problem we have data. And notice it's going to ask you the list. We want the difference list. Which is list 3 for me. And I want to change that to 90%. And when you're ready, you're going to go down and calculate. And this is our interval. So our interval is 2.2412 to 5.0088. So that's how many words we think that the people can remember the difference in words. So between 1 and 24 hours, I think they'll actually forget about 2 to 5 words. All right, so let's write that down formally. So in our conclusion, we want to write down the level. I am 90% confident. And then you want to write down the parameter that the true mean difference in recall words. And then you want to tell me how you subtract it. So we did 1 hour minus 24 hours. So we wrote down the level, we wrote down the parameter, and now we're ready to write down the answer. So I am 90% confident that the true mean difference in recall words is between 2.2412 and 5.0088 words. All right, there you go. And that is a matched pair t interval. Good luck.